Hello everyone.
Hi there everyone.
Welcome back to our book club. I am Miss Maka.
I am Mr. Darrell. Today we have an exciting adventure story for you. This is The Last of the Mohicans.
By James Fenimore Cooper.
Well, Ms. Maka, this novel, as you know, has been very popular. It's been a standard reading material in American schools for years and years and years.
Yes, and it has been adapted numerous times in many languages for films, for TV shows, TV movies, and cartoons.
It's a mark of its popularity. There must be something to it, and we would like to explore that with you today.
Yeah, but before we start exploring the book itself, let's look at the agenda. So first we will talk about the vocabulary of the book. Then we will talk about the author. After that, we'll show you the short summary of the book.
And from there, we're going to look at some of the characters, as always, plus a look at the setting, an interesting setting, a historical American setting, and some of the main themes, as always.
Yeah, but we finish our program with the homework.
I'm looking forward to the homework, Ms. Maka. But
yeah, me too.
Let's move on to the vocabulary for the book. Well, the first word is leather stocking. Now, this has an unusual meaning. It's actually referring to someone who's got the skills to survive in the wild.
Yeah, ადამიანი, რომელსაც უვითარდება უნარები, რომ გადარჩეს ველურ გარემოში.
Our next word is a verb, to sneak. To sneak. This is to move around and do things in a secretive way.
მალულად გადაადგილება.
Our next word is treason. Treason. This is when you act to overthrow your own government.
სახელმწიფო ღალატი.
Our next word is cautiously. This is when you act in a careful manner to accomplish something cautiously.
ფრთხილად, წინდახედულად.
Our next word is fate. Fate is something that happens to someone which he or she couldn't avoid.
ბედი, ბედისწერა.
Our next word is interracial. Interracial, involving members of different racial groups in a situation.
რასებს შორისი.
Our next word is untouched. Untouched. Something that's not touched, not explored, not handled in any other way.
ხელშეუხებელი.
And our final word is settler. Settler is a person who settles and moves in to live in a new environment, sometimes a tough environment.
ახალმოსახლე.
Well, Ms. Maka, let's look at the author now, James Fenimore Cooper. He was born in 1789, again, the end of the 18th century, in New Jersey, the state of New Jersey. He was the 11th of 12 children, if you can believe that. During his boyhood, his childhood, there were a few backwoods settlers left, and even fewer Native Americans, the people who used to live there before the Europeans came in. And this is very important to the discussion of the book. In his childhood, he learned the background knowledge needed for the adventure stories of his novels.
Yeah, in 1806, he became a sailor and then a midshipman in the Navy. After that, he inherited some kind of fortune from his father, and he married Susan Augusta de Lancey. So in 1820, they were together, and his wife actually bet him that he could write a better book than she was reading for that time. So he published The Spy, a tale of neutral ground in 1821. So this is a historical romance about the American Revolution. So then on its success, Fenimore moved to New York to pursue writing as a career.
Now we should swing towards a collection of stories he wrote, the Leather Stocking Tales they're called, which is one of our tales today. The leather stocking tales. Now, as you know, leather stocking normally is something you wear that's made of leather. But in this case, the meaning of leather stocking is someone who has the ability to survive, which is exactly what these stories are all about. There were 5 novels in this series, and it was set in 18th century New York. Some of the tales are The Last of the Mohicans, which is what we are going to talk about today.
His work was very influential to Europeans, to European writers. So Ferrymer's tone was criticized as being very pedagogical and very romantic, maybe, for that time. So he did contribute a great deal to the genre of American fiction, and in the grand enterprise, even today, everyone has read his books. So about his as we said, leather stocking stories.
So a very important American writer.
Exactly.
Okay, that was fascinating, Ms. Maka. Now let's look at the summary of today's story. It is an adventure story. It begins in the mid-18th century. Let me set that up for you. The French and Indian War, so-called, was going on at the time. The French army was attacking Fort William Henry, that's the name of the fort, a place where they defended themselves from attack, and it was a British outpost commanded by Colonel Monroe. Now, this colonel's daughters, two girls, Alice and Cora, set out from Fort Edward to visit their father in this Fort William. They're escorted to dangerous land by a major named Duncan Hayward, and they are guided by a native Indian named Magua.
Yeah. Traveling very cautiously, the travelers encounter the White Scout Nati Bumpole, who goes by the name Hawkeye, and his two Indian companions, Chingachgook and Uncas. So the latter son, the only surviving member of the once great Mohican tribe. Hawkeye says that Magua, a Huron, so this is a Huron.
Another tribe.
Another tribe member has betrayed the group by giving wrong directions, like to some kind of dangerous area. So the Mohicans attempt to capture the treacherous Huron actually was a failure because he escapes.
Hawkeye and the Mohicans lead the group to safety near a waterfall, but Huron allies of Magua attack early the next morning. Now Hawkeye and the Mohicans escape down the river. You can see how adventuresome it is already, but the Hurons capture Alice, Cora, Hayward, and Gamut. Magua celebrates the kidnapping, so he's obviously not on their side. When Hayward tries to convert Magua to the English side, the Huron reveals that he seeks revenge on Monroe for past humiliation and proposes to free Alice if Cora will marry him.
Yeah, so Cora actually has feelings to Uncas, and she angrily refuses Magua. Suddenly, Hawkeye and Mohicans, they attack this tribe, and there is a huge fighting scene, but from this, Magua actually escapes. After this journey, the group reaches Fort William Henry, the English stronghold.
3 days later, Hayward, Hawkeye, Monroe, and the Mohicans discover Magua's trail, and they begin to pursue this villain, this antagonist almost. We won't continue more about the plot, but we will tell you there is more treason, deception in store, and you'll probably enjoy it.
Yeah, and more stories that would teach you how to survive in the wild nature.
Yes.
Okay, now it's time to ask a question to our lovely audience. So, why is Hawkeye in The Last of Mohicans often called the first frontier hero in American literature?
Hawkeye is a famous marksman whose skills with his rifle, kill deer, is legendary. He's very loyal to his Mohicans companions and the British. The growing century definitely needed his own literature and also its heroes, so Cooper provided both of them.
Thank you very much. Yes, if we look at Hawkeye, we can see how he fights for two sides, maybe something like this. He's trying his best to somehow have balance.
And it was a difficult time as well. It was a time of survival. You had to be good with a gun. You had to know how to take care of yourself. And Hawkeye maybe represents this in the best possible way.
Yes, exactly, as a brave hero. Thank you very much.
Speaking of Hawkeye, let's move on to our characters. The first person that we should look at is Hawkeye, the hero of our story. He's a frontier hero. He's a woodsman, he's a hunter, he's a scout, all very adventuresome things to do with your life. Hawkeye is the hero's adopted name. His real name is, as Ms. Maka mentioned earlier, Natty Bumppo. He's a famous marksman. That means he's really good with aiming really far. He moves comfortably in the forest. He's not as comfortable in civilization. He's actually more of a natural woodsman type. And his closest friendships are actually with the native people, the native Indians of America at that time. Particularly these two characters, Chingachgook and Uncas. But he frequently asserts that he has no mixed blood in him. So that's something that Cooper is also stressing there. As a cultural hybrid, a character who mixes different elements of different cultures, he's almost ideal as the connecting point between the native Indians and the white settlers that have come into America at that time.
Yeah, exactly. And we can see that his skills to survive in wild nature actually helps lots of characters in the book. Yeah, our next character is Magua. So the novel's villain. So he is a Kerning Huron, nicknamed with the name like Renaud Sutil.
It's French, I think. Le Renard Sutil.
Sutil. So you can say Sutil. Okay. And he is actually fled from the tribe because of the drunkenness, right? And the Colonel Munro actually enforced this humiliating punishment, but he wants to come back and take revenge on him. So he has a very strong desire for it.
So that's what makes him into the book's antagonist and the villain. Revenge.
Exactly. Some kind of, maybe there is the reason, but still not enough to become a villain.
Yeah, Maka, do you have any hidden kind of revenge
feelings towards anyone?
Yeah.
No, I don't want to be villain. I want to be the protagonist of the novel, not the antagonist.
Learn how to fire a gun, then.
Exactly. Okay.
Like our hero. The next character is Uncas. This is Chingachgook's son. He's the youngest and last member of the tribe known as the Mohicans, the man that the book is named after, the last of the Mohicans. This is him, Uncas. He's a noble, proud, self-possessed young man. He falls in love with Cora Munro and suffers tragic consequences for this coupling, this interracial coupling, which is another point that Cooper is trying to make in the book. Noble Uncas, this last of the Mohican, he thwarts evil Magua's desire to marry Cora, the girl that he loves, and he also functions as Hawkeye's adopted brother, showing the brotherhood between the European settler and the native people. And he learns about leadership from Hawkeye.
Mm-hmm. And our next character, and you have already mentioned, this is Chingachgook. So this is Uncas' father, the last of the two surviving members of the Mohican tribe. So we can see that they are the last heirs of this tribe, right?
This once proud tribe.
Once proud tribe, exactly. An old friend of Hawkeye, Chingachgook is also known as Le Gros Serpent.
Le Gros Serpent, another French word.
I will try. Let me see. Le Gros Serpent.
Very well done.
Maybe really, really difficult to pronounce, but not for the people who know French. Yeah. Okay. So, but the meaning is very important. The meaning of this word is the great snake. So, can you tell me what can be the reason that he is called the great snake?
I believe it's because snakes have this sharp, cunning intelligence.
Yeah, exactly. He is called the great snake because of his crafty intelligence.
Let's move on to the last character, a very important character as well, Cora Munro, the girl that two different characters have fallen in love with. This is Colonel Munro's eldest daughter. She's a solemn girl, a serious girl, with a noble bearing as well, a bit like Uncas. Cora's dark complexion derives from her mother's black background, so she's also a product of mixed relations. Korra attracts the love of the Mohican warrior, Uncas, and seems to return his love cautiously, though. If you remember our word from the vocabulary, cautiously, she suffers a tragic fate in the end of the sentimental heroine.
Yeah, what a sad ending. So, but still you have to read the book for more stories about the ending.
Don't spoil it.
I'm not going to. Okay, Mr. Daryl, now it's time for the question. Do you have one question to ask to our audience?
I do. Now, why is Magua the villain rather than a heroic character in this book?
Magua is a villain rather than a hero because he's motivated by his single-minded personal desire for revenge after he's humiliated by Monroe.
Yeah, so people who are looking for revenge, they're never very sympathetic, are they? They're not someone you look up to.
Yeah, because they are driven by these not positive feelings, right?
So it's good that you don't have any revenge.
I don't, I swear. Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to our second question from the characters. How are Magua and Hawkeye alike and different in The Last of Mohicans?
Both Hawkeye and Magua feel at home in the wilderness and are both great hunters, but Hawkeye is loyal to the British and to his Mohican friends, but at the same time Magua betrays British and becomes an ally of the French.
That's true.
Okay, thank you very much. But Hawkeye really tries to keep balance.
He's an ideal sort of friend to both sides.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Daryl?
Let's move on to the setting as is customary at this point. We look at the when, remember, and we look at the where. Let me start with the when. So it's set in the mid-18th century, 1757 in fact, during the French and Indian War, so-called. It was also known as the 7 Years' War, actually, when France and Great Britain battled for control over North America. And it's a very deep history as well. It affected Canada as well. That's the reason why we have a French province where they speak French in that province and not English.
But that's because you can pronounce the French names better than me.
That's precisely why. I had to study it in school.
Okay.
During this war, both the French and the British used Native American allies, but the French were particularly dependent on their allies because they were outnumbered by the British.
Okay, but what about the place? So mostly the story happens in the area of Lake George, New York. So we can see from the book a great description of the nature. So of course you should read it. But what about the book itself? This is one of the most popular English language novels since its publication. And actually this book is very often given as an assignment for reading in English literature classes. So, and as we mentioned, it has been published and it has been made as a movie many times in many different languages.
Ms. Maka, that brings up an interesting question, which I think might be our question to the audience as well. Now, this is a historically set book, but is it history? And here's the question. Do you think books that describe history should only use facts and shouldn't exaggerate anything?
No, I don't think so. I think writer might use some techniques of exaggeration to make a reader more interested and to make them feel the time described in the book.
Good point, very good point. I mean, you don't really want a history lesson. You want to be entertained as well.
Yeah, especially, for example, the names, yeah? The names might be not real, but it can be symbolic, like Hawkeye, right? But it doesn't mean that the character should never have existed.
And, you know, it is a bit of a fantasy as well. You want to have fun, you want to have excitement. Maybe you have to change details to make it more exciting.
Definitely, and this is the masterpiece of the writer that we are surprised and we love as readers. Okay, so now, of course, every book has some kind of lesson to teach, some kind of main messages that the writer wants to tell us. and there are plenty, most usually, right? Plenty of main themes, but we have chosen some of them. And the very first one is interracial love and friendship. So The Last of Mohicans is a novel about race and the difficulty of overcoming racial divides. So Cooper actually suggests that interracial mingling is, of course, very desirable, but also very dangerous. So Cooper allows the genuine and long-time friendship between Hawkeye and who is a white man, as we already mentioned, and Chingachgook, who is the member of the very, very brave tribe from Mohicans tribe.
Mm-hmm. So that's a positive display of the interracial friendship, although Cooper makes it a little bit more complicated as well. And the interracial love between Uncas and Cora ends in tragedy, as you remember, showing that there are problems with that as well. Through Cora, the writer Cooper suggests that interracial desire can be inherited.
Of course it is, and of course, as you mentioned, it can have some kind of dangerous side, right? Okay, the second main theme that we have chosen for you is the role of religion in the wilderness. The character, David Gamut, actually allows Cooper to explore the relevance of religion in the wilderness. So in the theory, at least, the American frontier is untouched by human culture. It is a very fresh start, a piece of land not ruled by the conventions of the European high culture, and we can say that it is not yet ruined.
Mm-hmm. The fatalism of this character, David Gamut, contrasts with Hawkeye's pragmatism. Now, Hawkeye adapts to his surroundings, helps the other characters achieve improbable survival, all of which suggests that Cooper believes humans do have the ability to determine their own fates. Hawkeye is the perfect example of this. By the end of the novel, Gamut learns to move beyond the structure of his traditionalism and becomes a helpful and committed ally.
Exactly, okay, but this can be the lesson taught from the wilderness, maybe? I don't know, being together there, so who knows? Now let's have a question to our audience. Do you think that interracial love and friendship still face problems?
Nowadays, too many countries are fighting against racism, and it has already shown some positive results. But it still is an ongoing problem that we have to keep fighting.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very good message from you. Yes, of course, we can see lots of some kind of occasions when we encounter these problems. Mm-hmm. Right, Mr. Darrell?
Yeah, I mean, it still exists in the world, and it's a matter of learning to see other people as you see yourself.
Exactly. Okay, now I think it's time to wrap up the whole program, and we have started with the author part and have introduced to you Fenimore Cooper.
From there, we looked at the summary. As you remember, it's an adventure story. It's something to be enjoyed, to be loved. It's got narrow escapes, it's got revenge, it's got survival, it's got a whole bunch of things which you're sure to love.
Mm-hmm. Then we have talked about the characters, the protagonist of the novel, Hawkeye, that is a very interesting character, and there are lots of characters with really difficult names like Chingachgook or Magua. Yeah. Uncas, for example.
Remember, this is set in the mid-18th century. It's a historical novel. That doesn't mean that you automatically think it should be boring. In fact, it turns out to be quite exciting.
Yes, and the two main themes that we have chosen for you is interracial love and friendship, and religion, the role of religion in wilderness. Yeah. Now, let's look at the new vocabulary just one more time to practice pronunciation, of course, better with Mr. Darrell.
Thank you, Ms. Maka. Let's start once more. Leather stocking, to sneak, treason, cautiously, fate, interracial, untouched, and last, settler.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And we have not forgotten about the homework that we have to give you today. What is the homework?
Here's the question. Imagine that you found a place still untouched by people. Describe what that place would look like.
წარმოიდგინეთ, რომ იპოვეთ ადგილი, რომელიც ჯერ კიდევ ხელუხლებელია ადამიანის მიერ. აღწერეთ, როგორია ის.
And Ms. Maka, they can send their homework to the address they see on the screen right now.
Yes. დავალება გამოაგზავნეთ ეკრანზე მითითებულ მისამართზე. So, I guess that's it for today, Mr. Daryl.
I had fun, Ms. Maka. I don't know about you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, the audience, for your really interesting answers and very positive messages.
Yeah, that's one of the things we can take from books like these, the messages they have to teach us.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. See you next week.
Through the magics of television, we'll see you again. Goodbye.
Goodbye.